The ontological foundation of the Mandan people is rooted in a belief of perpetual presence on the North American continent. While Western historians categorize the Mandan as part of the Siouan linguistic family, the Nueda oral tradition asserts that they have existed from the beginning of time. They identify themselves as the people of the first man, a title that reflects their primary role in the human landscape of the Missouri River Valley. The Mandan cosmogony is centered on a dialectical relationship between two supernatural entities: Lone Man, Numakmaksina, and the first creator. According to traditional narratives, these figures divided a moist ball of earth and mud by creating a river, the Missouri, serving as the boundary between their creative jurisdictions. The first creator assumed responsibility for the western side of the river, sculpting mountains and hills punctuated by babbling brooks. Conversely, Lone Man shaped the eastern side, manifesting as plateaus, lakes, and ponds. Together, they populated the landscape with animals of the sea, air, and land before the eventual creation of humanity. This duality extended into the emergent stories of the various Mandan bands. One prevalent theory, supported by archaeological findings at the Heart Butte area dating back to 900 CE, suggests the Mandan migrated north along the Mississippi River through present-day Minnesota and Iowa before reaching the plains of South Dakota. Another narrative describes a vertical emergence from the underworld. The people were said to have climbed a grapevine that eventually snapped, leaving a portion of the population beneath the Earth's surface, a story that serves as a metaphor for the fragility of communal unity. Linguistic evidence places the Mandan as the vanguard of Siouan-speaking peoples moving westward from the Ohio River Valley. This migration, believed to have occurred between 700 and 1300 CE, was likely spurred by a major climatic shift that created warmer, wetter conditions, which were highly favorable for the cultivation of maize. Unlike the later arriving Hidatsa, who moved from central Minnesota toward the Missouri around 1600 CE, the Mandan were already established in stationary fortified villages by the time they encountered other regional groups. During the period from 1400 to 1600 CE, the Mandan occupied an area of roughly 500 miles along the Missouri, but external pressures from the Lakota and Arikara eventually forced a consolidation into a 100-mile stretch between the Cannonball and Knife Rivers. This period of coalescence saw the Mandan way of life modified through contact with the Hidatsa, who settled peaceably on their northern boundary. The Mandan were distinguished by their mastery of permanent architecture, specifically the Earth Lodge, a wate, a structure that served as both a practical dwelling and a symbolic representation of the universe. These dome-shaped homes were a response to the Little Ice Age, neoboreal, providing superior insulation compared to the rectangular dwellings used in earlier centuries. A defining characteristic of Mandan society was its matrilineal and matrilocal structure. The Earth Lodges were designed, built, and owned exclusively by the women of the tribe. Ownership was passed from mother to eldest daughter, and upon marriage, a man would relocate to his wife's lodge, which she shared with her sisters and mother. The construction process was a feat of community engineering, requiring approximately 150 trees per lodge. The men were responsible for cutting and hauling the massive cottonwood timbers, while the women supervised the binding, thatching, and sodding. The resulting structure was so robust that villagers could sit on the roof to watch ceremonies or scan the horizon for bison. A well-maintained lodge could last for 2 generations before the cottonwood posts would succumb to rot. The interior of an earth lodge, typically 40 feet in diameter, housed between 10 and 20 family members. The spatial organization was strictly defined by social and religious protocol. The central fire pit sat directly beneath a smoke hole, which could be covered with an old bull boat, a bison skin craft, during inclement weather. Villages were oriented around a central plaza, in the middle of which stood a cedar post encased in a wooden enclosure known as the Big Canoe, or the Ark. This shrine honored Lone Man, who was said to have built a similar corral to protect the Mandan from a catastrophic flood. The Mandan were the economic linchpins of the Great Plains, operating a massive trade hub that linked the Pacific coast to the Mississippi Valley. Their sedentary lifestyle allowed for the accumulation of significant agricultural surpluses, which were used as a form of currency in dealings with nomadic tribes. Women were the primary horticulturalists, managing vast gardens in the fertile Missouri bottomlands. They cultivated corn, squash, beans, sunflowers, and tobacco. Corn was the most vital crop, with some villages maintaining cache pits capable of holding 70,000 bushels. This surplus was not only a survival mechanism, but a diplomatic tool. Nomadic groups such as the Assiniboine, Crow, Cheyenne, and Arapaho traveled to Mandan villages to exchange bison robes, dried meat, and tallow for the Mandan's grain. After the mid-18th century, the Mandan became middlemen in the exchange of European goods. They traded their corn for horses, moving north from the Spanish Southwest, and firearms moving south from French and British Canada. This intermediate position fostered a period of immense prosperity, described by French explorer Sieur de la Vérendrye in 1738 as the height of Mandan power. The Mandan social fabric was woven together through a system of 13, later reduced to 7, matrilineal clans and a series of age-grade societies. These societies provided a structured path for personal development and tribal service. For men, the progression began in childhood, where boys chose a clan father as a spiritual mentor. As they aged, they purchased entry into more prestigious societies using goods or currency. The Black Mouth Society served as the village police, maintaining order and managing the logistics of the communal bison hunt. The Buffalo Bull Society was one of the most elite, reserved for seasoned warriors who had proven their bravery. Members wore headdresses made of buffalo hide and horns, and the most courageous were selected to wear full buffalo head masks, signifying they could never flee from an enemy. Women maintained their own age-grade societies, such as the Goose Society, which performed dances to ensure rain and a successful harvest, and the White Buffalo Cow Society, which assisted in calling the buffalo before a hunt. These social structures ensured that every member of the tribe, from the age of 8 into elderhood, had a defined role and responsibility to the collective. No aspect of Mandan culture fascinated 19th century observers more than the Okipa, a 4-day ceremony that served as the centerpiece of their religious calendar. This annual ritual was intended to commemorate the tribe's salvation from the flood, summon the spirit of the buffalo, and initiate young men into warrior status. The ceremony took place in the central plaza, with the entire village watching from the roofs of their earth lodges. 8 men representing buffalo bulls performed the bull dance, Belognapik, around the big canoe. These dancers were accompanied by figures representing grizzly bears, bald eagles, and wolves, creating a living tableau of the plains ecosystem. The bull dance occurred with increasing frequency over the 4 days, 4 times on the first day, 8 on the second, 12 on the third, and 16 times on the fourth. This rhythmic escalation was intended to induce a state of communal trance and spiritual readiness. While the bull dance occurred in public, the core of the initiation was held inside the medicine lodge, a structure used only for this purpose. Young men seeking to prove their endurance and spiritual depth underwent extreme physical sacrifice. After 4 days of fasting and sleep deprivation, they were subjected to ritual piercing. Wooden skewers were passed through the flesh of their chests, backs, or shoulders, and they were suspended from the lodge ceiling by ropes. Buffalo skulls were often attached to skewers in their legs to add weight and intensify the ordeal. While suspended, the initiates were expected to maintain composure and receive visions. Upon being lowered, they completed the last race around the big canoe until they collapsed. For the Mandan, this was not an act of cruelty, but one of profound religious worship and communal survival. The ceremony concluded with the Walking with the Buffalo ritual, which imbued the participants and their families with Sapani energy. On June 18, 1837, the American Fur Company steamboat St. Peter's approached Fort Clark. The boat's captain was aware that at least one crew member was infected with smallpox, yet he refused to quarantine the vessel for fear of losing profit. When the boat docked, Mandan and Arikara villagers boarded to trade, unaware of the biological threat. The resulting epidemic was devastating. Within weeks, the population density of the Earth Lodge villages, which had once been a source of strength, became a catalyst for transmission. Francis Chardon, the superintendent at Fort Clark, recorded the daily tally of the dead in his journal, noting that the Mandan fatality rate eventually reached 8 to 10 people per day. One of the most tragic losses was Matotope, 4 Bears, the highly respected second chief who had befriended George Catlin and Carl Bodmer. Known for his bravery and diplomacy, 4 Bears died on July 30th, 1837. The survivors of the 1837 epidemic recognized that they could no longer survive as separate entities. The Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara tribes combined their forces to establish Like a Fishhook village in 1845. This settlement became the center of tribal life for nearly a century, allowing the 3 groups to preserve their distinct identities while cooperating for mutual defense against Lakota expansion and American military encroachment. During this era, the 3 tribes began the slow process of cultural integration that would eventually lead to their formal recognition as the 3 affiliated tribes, MHA Nation. In 1851, the Treaty of Fort Laramie established their reservation boundaries, though these would be repeatedly reduced in the following decades as settler colonial interests prioritized ranching and railroad development. The recovery of the 3 affiliated tribes was shattered in the mid-20th century by a project that tribal activists describe as the most destructive act ever perpetrated against them, the construction of the Garrison Dam. As part of the New Deal-era Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin program, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sought to control the flooding of the Missouri River and provide hydroelectric power to white downstream communities. The location for the dam was deliberately chosen to spare white towns, resulting in the flooding of the most fertile acreage of the Fort Berthold Reservation. Tribal Chairman George Gillette famously wept while signing the land transfer contract, stating that the federal government was blowing away the promises of the 1851 treaty. The move from the sheltered, resource-rich river valleys to the windy, desolate uplands led to a marked decline in the standard of living, increased health issues, and a reliance on federal welfare that persists into the modern era. The history of the Mandan people is defined by a paradox of permanence and forced movement. They were the first sedentary civilization of the Northern Plains, yet they faced 2 of the most concentrated periods of displacement in American history: the biological siege of 1837 and the engineering siege of the 1950s. Despite these challenges, the Mandan have not been erased. They exist today as a core component of the 3 affiliated tribes, maintaining a population of over 17,000 members. Their contemporary governance, centered in Newtown, North Dakota, continues to advocate for control over tribal resources and the preservation of a culture that has survived against all epidemiological and political odds. The story of the Mandan is one of profound cultural resilience, where the people of the first man continue to find their way back to the Missouri River, reclaiming their language and their land in the digital age.